I'd like to call the February 14th Township Committee meeting of Long Hill to order at 7:39. Would everybody please join me in a pledge of allegiance? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Debbie, would you please take roll?
Committeeman Maringolo.
Here.
Committeeman Ray.
Present.
Committeeman Schuler.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Dorsey.
Here.
Mayor Pasurcia.
Present. Before we start, I'd like to ask everybody to take a moment of silence for the victims and everyone affected by the tragedy in Parkland, Florida, at the Marjorie Stoneman High School. Thank you. So at this point, I'd like to call up Captain English, Captain Robert English. And Bob, I'd almost prefer if you could describe what happened. We have a couple of proclamations, but I think you're more familiar with the details.
Actually, I was down in Florida at the time, but from what I heard, we had someone that was in distress at Garden State Fireworks, and the person was having difficulty breathing and turning blue at the time, and someone went on the PA system wanting to know if anybody could assist, and as luck would have it, one of the employees of Garden State, Ian Vickory, responded immediately and was able to assess the patient and start CPR. Now, normally on CPR calls, it's the police that are there first, and they do it, and then the first aid squad arrives. But in the successful CPR, it's much better to start it as soon as you can. So if there's a bystander there, that greatly adds to the probability that it's going to be a successful CPR call. And in this case, Ian Vickory stepped up, assessed the patient, did CPR, and by the time the police and the first aid squad arrived, the patient was responsive. So this was outstanding because it usually doesn't happen this way. And I'd really like to recognize Ian Vickory. Ian, congratulations. Did a fantastic job. His family is here, Dr. Donna Vickory, and also Paul Vickory, who are all in the medical business. Paul was an ambulance salesman for probably 30 or 40 years. I think Long Hill First Aid bought a number of ambulances off of Paul. And I'd also like to recognize some of the other folks. Alex Baelish. Alex, stand up. Alex is a CPR instructor with Care First CPR in Edison, and he was the instructor for Ian. And I know I've been an instructor for a long time, and it's very rare that one of your students actually gets to perform successful CPR, but it happened in this case. I'd also like to thank the police department. The police department, I believe they had 4 or 5 officers there. Very quickly, they respond very quickly on all CPR calls. And in addition, the first aid squad was called out, and it's one of these all hands on deck calls. And I think we had about, probably 6 or 7 people on the first aid squad respond. And I think some of them are here today. The crew chief who was not here was Andrea Sampson. Lisa Scanlon, who is here. Lisa, I believe you drove the ambulance, didn't you? Okay. Tom Fahey, one of our high school members. Vincent Vioto. Vincent's here, right? Another high school student. Travis Snyder. Jonathan Fessock. Jonathan's here, and he's another one of our high school students. And Paul Wormuth. And assisting everybody were the paramedics from Atlantic Healthcare. So by the time the patient reached the hospital, she was in pretty good shape comparatively. And again, I'd like to congratulate Ian for saving the patient's life.
And if I could, Captain, I'd like to read, a small token of our appreciation, proclamations for both the First Aid Squad and, of course, for Ian. In recognition of outstanding service, this certificate of appreciation is awarded to Ian Vickory and to the Long Hill Township First Aid Squad in recognition of your outstanding performance in rendering life-saving CPR for an individual at the Garden State Fireworks Company. I deem it an honor and a privilege to present you both this certificate of appreciation. So if I could, and I notice, is the echoes here? I see them. So maybe we can, and the family, everybody who wants to be in the picture, it would be great if you guys could come up.
Oh, Chief.
Well done. So here, as a captain, on behalf, where's Ms. Scanlon? Everybody.
Come on around this way.
It's not gonna be an easy picture, is it?
Let's put her next. Sorry, you're right.
Are you able to get it? NPR.
I had just one
Absolutely.
appendix on here. Today is Valentine's Day, and it's also American Heart Month. So I'd like to put in a commercial for some of the CPR and first aid classes that we run at the First Aid Squad. Lisa Scanlon's our primary instructor for those classes. We have probably 1 or 2 classes every month, and I would encourage everybody to take a CPR and first aid class because you never know when you're going to need it. You can go to the town website under recreation, and they're all scheduled in there. Thank you.
Thank you, Captain. And you are much too humble, and so is Lisa Scanlon. This is not the first save this year, is it? Or in the last 12 months? I think there's been a couple of others. So, everybody who's watching, you should thank the First Aid Squad, the police department, the fire department, all of our emergency services folks, because the job they do is incredible, and we have proof tonight that it saves lives. So I can't thank you guys enough. So round of applause for everybody. This is the interesting part of the meeting because everybody's trying to figure out when they can exit. So Dennis, make sure you see who goes first. No, anybody who wants to leave, I think it's appropriate. Thank you very much for coming. Fran, it's good to have you.
Wait to be here.
Ian, well done. So why don't we go to liaison reports? I'll start to my left. Bruce?
Just a quick update on redevelopment. As I mentioned at the last meeting, we are going to be unable to do any type of residential projects in the Stirling redevelopment site. That does not mean that the redevelopment project is dead. What that means is we have to look for alternatives to make the project economically viable. So at this point, what we're doing is we're looking at off-site locations for some type of residential projects and reserving the Stirling area for some type of commercial redevelopment. When you combine the two, then the numbers make sense. So right now, we're evaluating different areas around town that might be suitable for some type of residential development, and then once we have some definitive plans, I can come back to this committee and provide an update as to what we are looking at and what makes sense.
And that will include the affordable component
That will
of the
also,
residential.
right, because part of our affordable housing plan, we had a certain number of affordable units in that plan. Those units are, have to be transferred somewhere else, so the other sites that we're looking at would gain that affordable housing component of the plan.
Thanks.
That it, Bruce?
That's it, thank you.
Cornell?
Nothing to report here.
Matt?
Please recycle.
Well, you know what? Okay, so I was going to, but I think
haven't had a
Nancy
chance.
has something.
Nancy,
I'll wait for the administrative.
Yeah,
report.
but obviously, we still have, don't forget, we have our cooking oil recycling, which is just taking off, styrofoam as always, and we still have the aluminum that the fire department collects for the St. Barnabas burn unit. I know people at Super Bowl parties, maybe it's a chance to put some of the cans out in there. We want to get it filled up, because I think every time they fill it up, it's probably about $200, $250 that goes directly to the St. Barnabas burn unit. So you do two good things. One, you're recycling, and two, the money that they recover from it is going to help people that are burn victims. So please keep that in mind.
And I know Nancy's going to expound upon it a little bit, but don't be dismayed by the article that was in the Echo Sentinel. The numbers there were before we went to the 1 can or 2 can limit in garbage collection. So we expect our numbers are going to jump substantially once we see the result of the added recycling that we've done. But I'll leave that to Nancy.
I'm sorry if I could just ask, what year? I thought that was based off last year's data.
No, it was
216.
15. That was 15.
Oh, that was 15?
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's before we did what we did, which was in large part why we did it. Okay, Brendan.
And no report.
Okay, so on the consent agenda, 18-6065 and to 079, but there's an amendment to 18-079. We are removing Aram, and I apologize if I don't get it right, Kachadorian, because we're just waiting on some paperwork, so he'll be added to a future agenda once we have that paperwork in hand. So I'm looking for a motion, or did somebody want to poll, recuse, et cetera?
I'll move 18-065 through 18-079 as amended, as stated in the agenda.
Second?
Debbie?
Committeeman Maringolo?
Yes.
Committeeman Ray?
Yes.
Committeeman Schuler?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Dorsey?
Yes.
Mayor Paserchi?
Yes. Well, there are no discussion items. So we can go to old, new business. We could just combine them. But I think first, Nancy, can we do the administrator report
Right.
as part of
That kind of covers a lot of,
new business?
okay.
And
For old business.
I have an item I'd like to raise for new business as well.
Okay, yeah, we won't skip you.
Okay, so this is just an update on things that have happened over the last, ongoing projects. The Gillette Train Station was brought up at the last meeting. There was a request for additional lighting. We have been in contact with both JCP&L and New Jersey Transit to see if they are willing to participate, so that we don't have to pay for it. We are waiting to hear back from them. So if they say no, we will get quotes for the work, and I'll present them to the committee. The energy audit is ongoing. Finance and DPW are working to get the last set of bills that they need, so we expect to get those reports in the coming weeks. At the last meeting, a resident raised the issue of a sump pump at the former Tifa property draining into the township sanitary sewer. This information came from the environmental report that was provided at that meeting. Specifically, page 24 of the report states that a sump, which is, quote, designed to collect groundwater seeping in from rain events, unquote, is located in Building 3. The report further states that the water collected from the sump and a slop sink within the painter space discharged into the sanitary sewer system. As you know, our ordinance prohibits sump pumps which discharge drainage resulting from rainwater springs, wells, or other groundwater from being connected to the township sanitary sewer. So based on that information, I asked our township code enforcement officer to go visit the premise in question. He did that, and according to his report, the drain for the sink, the slop sink, was directed into the sump pit, not the other way around. So while the report is correct to state that the sump pump is hooked up to the sanitary sewer line, it is incorrect when it states that the water is groundwater or stormwater runoff, because it is only water from the sink next to it. And I do have photos if anybody wants to see them. Additionally, the sump pump does not have a float attached to it, so it doesn't come on automatically as it does in your home, like in your garage when it's collecting rainwater. It has to be turned on manually. So because it's a negative gravity situation where the sink is lower than the sewer, the pump is actually used to pump the water out of the sink up the wall into the sewer. There is no rainwater, so it is not a violation of our ordinance. And if anybody has any questions about that, I'd be happy to answer them or get additional information. The electric car charger, we are waiting still for a contract from JCP&L. Oaks Road improvements, the project is currently being designed. We had to ask for an extension to the required date to award the project. We had to ask for that extension from New Jersey DOT. It is anticipated the project will be bid in April, awarded in May, and construction will begin in July. The Mitchell Road drainage improvements, New Jersey DEP permits have been obtained, and the project is currently out for bid, and the award is anticipated in March with construction to begin in April or early May. The Gillette School Crossing on Valley Road, the installation of flashing beacons and new signs which alert drivers to pedestrians crossing Valley Road by the school is complete. There are currently old pedestrian crossing signs that are in the way of the new beacon and signs. And because Valley is a county road and the county has serial numbers on all their signs and have to track them in their inventory, Morris County will remove the old signs, which is supposed to be done this week. There are 2 signs that need to be relocated, and the county needs to wait for a mark out for the relocation. That should be done early next week. And the county engineer dropped off keys to the beacon boxes yesterday, which I gave to the DPW director. The Matthew Cantor Park Trail, we received a DEP permit to begin construction to extend the trail around the park. Morris County Soil Conservation District certification needs to be obtained, and then the project will be bid and awarded. The Millington Schoolhouse, work there is progressing. There was actually heat on both sides last week. It was in the vicinity of 70 degrees on both sides.
How much that cost us?
Yeah, I think it was, I don't remember what the last bill was, but more work still needs to be done to make sure that the air conditioner is working, because it's too cold to put the air conditioner on now, and last time this happened, last time it was tested, both the air conditioner and heat came on at the same time, so we have to see if that needs to be fixed. Offices can probably be leased out. I guess it depends on, there are 2 people who expressed some interest. We come up with a figure, which is, up to all of you, but we had said perhaps $650 a month, which would include utilities. I don't know if people would be comfortable in renting, not knowing whether the air conditioners are going to work yet, but it's only February. We hope to have it fixed by then. It's an ongoing process with that building.
So Nancy, if I could interrupt you there, we could be potentially renting them as of March 1st. That would be a,
You could, as I said, as long as somebody's comfortable knowing that there's some work that probably still needs to be done. The Transportation Advisory Committee, as you recall, there were 3 areas of concern that were outstanding. One is Railroad Avenue, which I'll ask Jack to address when I'm finished. But on the other 2, our police traffic officer had a discussion with the county engineer. The first one is Mountain Avenue, Meyerville Road, and Long Hill Road intersection. The township needs to speak directly with the County Shade Tree Commission to eliminate the current vegetation that is impeding the driver's line of sight, particularly those that are looking south on Mountain Avenue from Long Hill Road eastbound. So I need to know if the county's okay with us talking to the county shade, if the committee's okay with us talking to the County Shade Tree Commission to get that cleared. There is talk of relocating the stop sign and stop bars. The county road department would have to do that, so the county engineer will be meeting with our engineer, police, and DPW at the site to see what would be involved there. Regarding Lackawanna Boulevard and Valley Road, as we discussed at our last meeting, the survey of the residents resulted in a 50-50 split whether or not to do the restriction of the turning sign, turns. So the TAC recommended making adjustments to the traffic light. After the last minute meeting, we communicated with the county, and we were informed that an upgrade of the light would probably cost the township about $30,000, and that would be our share. Theirs would probably be $70,000.
That's to make it a turn signal, or?
It would probably have to be a whole new light. It was to make, to have a left turn arrow going from Valley onto Mountain. There are a lot of things that are involved with upgrading that light. So, because they're 2 county roads, usually it's a 50-50 split, but because they're 2 county roads, it's a 70-30 split.
Okay.
So the county would be 70. The estimate came from, the engineer recently did an upgrade that cost $100,000, so that's what she's guessing. So because we don't know if even putting that arrow would work, the police department recommended that instead of investing the money, which may or may not result in an improvement, maybe we should conduct a trial period for a month of the no turns that were proposed in the survey. In spite of the fact that half the residents are in opposition, it may be worth trying to see if it alleviates the problem before you invest that money in upgrading the traffic light. So that decision is up to this committee. It would be for a month. If they do the trial, it would be for a month. Again, it was no left turn from Valley onto Lackawanna between 4 and 7, and I don't remember the other time, or no right turn from onto Jersey.
Did the advisory committee make a recommendation, or they left it to just do the survey?
The recommendation was, let's see if we can fix the light, change the light configuration. When it came back that it was going to cost $30,000, the police department recommended, well, maybe before you invest that money, and the county invests that money in something that we're not sure is going to alleviate the problem, why don't we do a trial run of the turn restrictions for a month and see if that helps?
So my own take on this, because I take that route every day, or well, not every day, but often. I think it would make a difference. This is just a gut feel. As long as the 25 mile an hour limit is strictly enforced on Lackawanna,
What might make a difference?
the left turn signal.
The left.
The reason people go down Lackawanna is because one, you gotta wait forever to make a left-handed turn, right? And if people go blazing fast down Lackawanna, then it's a viable alternative. If the light is offered to them to make a left turn, and you don't have to wait, and you have to drive really slow down Lackawanna, it's now going to be faster to go to the traffic light and make the left, right? It's all about people trying to take the quickest route. You know,
My question is, why wouldn't we do both? Why wouldn't we restrict the turn and do the light? Right? Because if you restrict the turn, you have to go to the light. You turn in the turn signal, right?
yeah, but then you
You're
got,
giving people the opportunity to turn and hold back the traffic coming the other direction.
I was going to ask the same question.
Yeah.
Well, I think because then you're also impacting the people who live on the street,
yeah.
and that was, I guess, why 50% of them,
And I mean, and, you know, to be clear, this is not the first road that has complained about fast traffic going through their street, and we've never made it left turn only on any of the other requests to date. I mean, River Road comes to mind. River Road is taken quite frequently rather than going up to Division Avenue, because Division Avenue is such a pain to get onto. But yet, we still haven't offered any relief there.
Well, Division's not as complicated in the sense that
No,
there's no traffic light there. I mean, there's a stop. I mean, people stop at,
Right, but it's a horrible intersection.
yeah, that, true that. So where are you leaning?
I don't like the limiting the left turn.
So then, if
I'm-
there's only two choices, then you're going with the left turn signal, the light,
the light.
the light.
We have to see if we can find room in the budget before we can commit to that, but that would be my own personal preference, but.
I think that makes sense.
That's a hard,
Matt?
I mean,
It's a budgetary issue to me, so
Yeah.
I'll let the budget.
we won't
look at
know
it first.
until we start doing the budget, honestly. I mean, I'm a bit stunned that it never was two left turn signals to begin with. I mean, there's two left turning lanes there.
Well,
on-
you know,
On
it's funny.
Valley,
I
and there's
think-
no,
For some reason, I think the county refrained from left turn signals if in Long Hill or all along Valley Road. You may remember on Plainfield, there was no left turn signal. And for years, we had people asking for that left turn signal. It was put in, I think, as part of the Walgreens application, and it's been a phenomenal traffic director. So I'm inclined to go along with it. I get that the Budget Committee has to meet, but $30,000 of a $100,000 project,
Approximate.
approximately, it could be a little bit more, maybe a little bit less too. That would be part of the capital budget, or how,
well, it
where
could,
would it fit in?
I mean, wasn't me. I mean, we'd like to do it in OpEx, but we're trying to get to the pay-as-you-go, we just don't know what
But
the
if you don't
budget is.
get to it, I mean, this is an issue that's not gonna go away.
No, but we need to have the budget done in a month,
Yeah.
so it's
Yeah,
not,
And honestly, just at first glance, from what I know, there probably is enough funding to do it.
And I know, I mean, not to play on the drama aspect of it, it is a safety issue. This is not, you know.
Look, the point is that.
It's not a luxury.
We haven't seen the budget, we haven't gotten
Yeah.
into the details yet, so we can't comment on it. It's that simple.
All right, but between the recommendation, it seems that the traffic light.
Yeah.
Okay,
well,
Until after the budget. We'll
I'm
put it on
receiving the
hold
budget.
until the
Yeah.
budget.
yeah, we'll figure out if we can pay for it, I think that's probably, I
Okay,
think it's the
fair enough.
preference, we just don't know whether or not.
okay.
We could be back to
Because
the no
there's-
left turn if the budget comes the wrong way.
Yeah, so we have to postpone this discussion for a month.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
All right, the county will be milling and resurfacing New Vernon Road from Meyerville Road to the Township line and Division Avenue from Valley Road to Long Hill Road. They are currently scheduled to be completed in 2018, but the county warns that there's always a possibility they may have to be put off till 2019 due to unforeseen circumstances.
Division, are they going over the train tracks as well? That division
Well,
of Long Hill, can we get the seam better?
Technically, Long Hill comes down from the blinking light into Millington, so are they taking that section as well?
But that's not Division.
No, but Long Hill to the blinking light needs to be repaved.
Oh,
From the train station up to the blinking light needs to be repaved as well. I don't know if that's county or if that's our road.
That's a county road.
Yeah, for sure it's county.
Yeah, that's county.
We can query, because, I mean, the county's always been good about working with us when something makes sense.
Right,
and
so
that
where
makes
is this
sense.
from Valley to?
It's basically Division Avenue, and then as you get to
front of the town
Millington,
hall.
you go north up Long Hill Road to Basking Ridge Road, where Basking Ridge Road and Long Hill come together at the blinking light.
They're going to be here, I mean, part of the expense is getting everything here.
Right.
So it may make sense for them anyway.
Yeah,
Just to do another couple hundred feet.
Right.
But if we can just make sure that they do the, and I think they did all right at Millington Train Station, but if they can get the train seam better than they did on Mountain,
It's getting a little worse, too.
it's getting a lot worse. There's a lip. It was New Jersey Transit that did the crappy job
And we,
for that little section that they
and I
replaced
spoke
on the
with them
boundary.
several times about it, but
But we didn't, the county didn't repave over that. The county stopped like 50 feet short of the train tracks. So now you've got a seam with Old Road followed by patchwork, then the train tracks.
I think Cornell's point is quality control
Yeah.
and stay on top of it.
Yeah,
And by the way, and I could, maybe I should have called as well. If you could check with the county, are they going to do Long Hill Road, not that Long Hill Road, but the Long Hill Road through the swamp? It wouldn't make sense for them to stop at the border. I imagine they're gonna go all the way
Into Harding.
So if we can get a chance, just ask the county,
New Vernon Road turns into Long Hill Road
yeah.
in the swamp.
which is what led to one of the confusions on those nodes with Verizon. I kept asking him, he says, oh, we're not doing anything on Long Hill Road. No, not that Long Hill Road, that Long Hill Road.
Okay. That was, I just want to also say that, just remind you that the curbs and sidewalks remain the township's responsibility. But they will be putting in ADA ramps when
Well,
necessary.
Tom, DPW Director Sweeney's always on top of this. I'm sure he's gonna work with them,
Right,
pre-con and all that stuff.
right, because that has to be done ahead of time. You brought up Verizon. You asked me to put this on the list, waiting for an update from you.
I did, and that's, he misunderstood my question, and he came back and said, no, we're not doing anything on Long Hill Road. I said, not that Long Hill Road. And then he said, we're not doing anything in Harding. I said, I know, but it's New Vernon Road. So he was conflating New Vernon Road with New Vernon, when New Vernon Road, for those that don't know, is in Long Hill. So it's a little confusing.
So did you want to talk about those Verizon boxes or no?
I don't have an answer yet. I will have an answer by next meeting.
Okay. Community options, the committee approved an MOU with community options in December to enter into agreement for, to make a contribution towards a group home. The MOU was finally signed by their corporate offices and is being returned to us. They are probably making an offer on a house within the next 30 days, but they are hoping to find another house that needs a little less renovation. So they're going to keep me posted on that. You requested a brief analysis regarding sewer charges. This was from the last meeting to ensure whether sewer fees are only used for sewer operations. We only did 2017, and I can tell you that we budgeted 1.48 million, and we spent 1,438,620.51. So it's almost a wash. What probably is not included, and I'm making it perfectly even, there's a lot of DPW work that was not accounted for in this analysis. When DPW goes out and paves roads after their sewer breaks or things like that, we could have included that in here, but we didn't get into that level of detail. So essentially for 2017, what came in for sewer and what went out for sewer was a wash. It includes all of the salaries of all the people who worked on sewer. In previous years, though, I want to point out that in previous years, you'd allocated $1 million towards I&I. Since we're that close, it seems obvious to me that that money came out of the general budget. It could not have come out of the sewer because there's just not enough. I don't know how many years you spread it out over, but the debt service payments on the bond probably did not come out of the general fund.
Not sure what you mean by we allocated $1 million a year. We haven't.
Not $1 million a year, $1 million over, I'm not sure over how many years. At some point in the past, you allocated $1 million towards I
In
and I.
2013, as part of the big project that we did for approved for $4.5 million, there was probably about $1.3 million worth of an I&I work as part of that bond.
Right. So my point is that the debt service payments on that probably were paid for by the general fund. Since we're that close, where we have appropriations and revenue that are almost equal, I don't know where else
We need to
come
pull,
from.
we need to pull the numbers that Len sent last year, because I remember those were in there, and he had debt service in there, so then maybe we've got some new numbers coming, so.
Well, I don't know
But-
that, I don't know what Len did.
Yeah.
But what we did here is we took all the salaries of all of the people who did any work on sewer and allocated part of their salaries and
Okay.
health benefits, including the engineer, the attorney.
Okay.
I don't know if Len did that.
Did we include all the legal fees from last year as well?
We included, well, Jack keeps a list broken down by category, so we included what he gave us.
But I'm talking the work that
Including-
the work that Remington Vernick did, and and what was our law firm? Yeah, Hawkins.
Hawkins, yes, we did Hawkins.
So
and
they're in there as well.
I didn't think Remington was last year, so I didn't have Remington bills.
Yeah, Remington would have probably, unless we paid them up front, but I would have thought Remington got paid last year. Right? Those studies came out January.
But are you asking, are they in those
Are
numbers?
they in those numbers? Yes.
I don't think Remington is in those numbers, no.
What about Hawkins?
Yes.
Okay.
Hawkins is and Kleinfeld is.
So
Kleinfelder.
that would explain the missing debt service.
I know where you're
Okay.
going with it.
Okay.
So it's.
So then essentially. it's been
Because
a
those
while.
weren't in there in previous years, so we had, so basically last year we were 100,000 short.
Which maybe is, but again, there are some other things that probably could have gone in here that we didn't drill into that level of detail.
If you could send that to me, that would,
Yep.
I would, and Bruce, Finance Committee, we'll take a look at it. But-
And that's great. I think the impetus behind this brief analysis was, I think a gentleman from the public had asked the question, was any money taken from sewer fees and put into the general budget? And I think we can say, which you did answer.
It definitely didn't go into the general budget, but the general budget, if anything, might have
Fair enough.
backstopped a little bit,
Well-
which is part of my concern about changing to a utility. Because, now you're really making it dollars and cents, and one of the considerations is, keep in mind, that sewer plant is an asset ultimately of all taxpayers, even if you're hooked up or not. Right? Like if we sold the sewer system, right, the debt service wouldn't have just been going to the ratepayers, it would have been going to the other 12% as well.
Yeah, I know. We're going to get into the weeds.
Yeah,
We're gonna get into the weeds.
it's not a perfect science.
I
there's
can
no
tell
doubt.
you, the problem with that logic is going to be the non-sewer users
Yeah,
have been hearing similar arguments for 50
And
years.
I understand.
That's the
and
problem.
Yeah, and at what point is it bought and paid for? I understand. You did bring up an interesting point about whether or not, if it's a utility, can the utility charge the township for repaving the road? Or can the township charge the utility for repaving the road after the road is opened?
I would imagine so.
Yes, yes. Anything that has to do with the sewer can be charged to
Yep.
the utility and can be reimbursed to
Mhm.
the township, so DPW. That's where, our salaries get allocated.
No, I
you know,
understand.
split that way. And we broke this out not only to answer that question, but this is the basis for the utility.
Mhm.
This is where the breakdown.
Right.
So the bottom line is it essentially was a wash, and with your explanation to make up for the difference for the debt service, it's been a wash for the most part, give or take $10,000 or $20,000.
Well, except this year, which is probably off 100, because what we probably didn't do was increase the rate to account for Hawkins.
Fair enough.
But we we talked about it at the budget meeting, so I don't know how it missed, but.
And as part of this, I did contact several towns, as was requested by this committee, and the response, why they use a utility, is the obvious. So the sewer users are the ones that actually pay for it. But the biggie, and you were in fact correct, Cornell, or maybe it was Bruce, it's because it's outside the 2% cap. And that is a critical issue. So for that, it makes it a no-brainer.
Also, there's a cap adjustment. I don't know if you want to talk about that or not. Essentially, what happens is the 2% cap, if we have a $15 million budget, just say 15 million even, our 2% cap would be $300,000 that we could increase our levy by. Now, if we take out this 1.5 million, we're down to a $13.5 million budget, so our cap drops to 260.
Right.
So there's an adjustment. It's not, you don't get to keep the whole cap when you're pulling out the, yeah. And you mentioned Hawkins. Hawkins is in here. It's just I don't have Remington.
Correct, so we need to figure out where Remington is, because I would have thought that was paid this year.
17, you mean?
Yeah, 17 rather.
Okay.
All right, I'll let you know. And then I just had one more thing. And that is the recycling article. There was an article in the newspaper last week about recycling, that we were one of the lowest in the county.
The lowest.
The lowest. The figures quoted in the paper were from 2015. One explanation for why our numbers were down from 14 to 15. In 15, the state no longer allowed us to report street sweepings in our report. That year, they counted, in 14, 223 tons out of about 2,000 usable tons in 2014. So street sweepings made up 10%. So from 14 to 15, our numbers were lower because we had to take those out because the state no longer allowed them. We have made changes since, as you mentioned earlier, to our curbside garbage collection. So our solid waste disposal is declining every year, which is what the state really wants to see. Your solid waste is going down because more people are recycling. We have added styrofoam, fluorescent light bulbs, and cooking oil to our recycled material, which will eventually increase our numbers. And as the DPW director noted in the article, other towns that have more industry naturally just produce more recyclable material, which helps their average. But the bottom line is that this study is not a poor reflection on our curbside recycling program. Our residents are generally good recyclers, and the only real way to increase our numbers is for our residents to recycle more.
So, 2 questions. Does Tom have a forecast of what 16 or 17 might look like? I mean, we know how much we're tipping.
He didn't give me those numbers, but he knows that they're up. I'll get them to you as soon as he
Just
has them.
rough guesstimate, and then,
You're right.
and then,
He knows numbers.
and then my follow-up to that is, depending on what those numbers are, what can we do to drive those numbers higher?
Well, that's a discussion.
Promotional campaigns, enforcement, like, how do we get people to recycle more? Like, I recycle everything. I probably recycle stuff I shouldn't, right? But I know there are some people that, bottles go in the garbage.
I know many
How
years
do-
ago,
how do-
whenever we lived in Bloomfield, if you had any recyclables in your garbage, they put a sticker on it and wouldn't take it. That was a good way of making you
Tough
recycle.
neighborhood, Bloomfield.
So the enforcement isn't necessarily a summons, which we can by ordinance, I think.
They just didn't take it.
But we could start it by just not taking it.
So,
And that was-
I mean,
that was a very
I'd say
good way.
let's see what the numbers are, and then have
Well, yeah, he
a
said
discussion
they
from
will
there.
definitely be
I mean,
higher, so.
And I know it's not going to be an exact science, but we could look at the years before what the solid waste was, see what the decline has been, and kind of estimate what the recycling is, because it didn't just disappear.
Right. It should be as one goes down.
No,
one goes up.
I'm sure Tom's got the data. I'm sure he gets from Midco, is that who we're using, Midco or Republic?
We use Republic.
Republic. You know, what they're doing in recycling, and we know we got the tonnage
Yeah,
numbers from county.
we can get
So
it.
it's two numbers. What's the percent?
And Tom has said that he's very comfortable that our numbers have jumped quite substantially.
Good.
One thing I will say, first off, great for everybody who's recycling out there, but I was driving, I won't say where, because then it'll identify, so the cardboard boxes, please, 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 cut them, just compress them. I drove by one house the other day, there were about 15 empty boxes out there still, you know, and I'm thinking that's gonna tie up the truck. So just cut them, you know, compress them.
At least they're recycling them.
I know, so tough luck.
Doesn't the machine go?
Actually, but our ordinance requires it to be,
No, I don't.
No, I don't think our
No,
ordinance
we-
says. That was the,
I remember when I first moved in, you had to cut up all the boxes,
Okay.
because I
but it's
remember
more,
cutting
it's
up all
more
my
work.
boxes.
for-
But now it's
It's
like,
more work for the gentleman that's out there,
yeah, I get you.
so.
And just on recycling, pizza boxes are not recyclable. I know people always put them in recycling, they're not.
Yeah.
Actually, just
Any-
because,
any-
because,
cardboard.
Anything with food in contact with it is
because of
not
the,
recyclable.
right, because of the grease on the
Yep.
top of the lid.
Yep.
Interesting fact, I learned from the recycler.
yeah,
So, thank you, that was great.
Okay.
So I appreciate it, Nancy. Old business, I think Bruce said something, or new business.
Yeah, I wanted to raise the issue of our Rossi list. In some of the efforts with the redevelopment, we've had to look at property that the township owns and see if it was available to put residential housing on. But every piece of property that the township owns has been listed on the Recreation Open Space Inventory List, or the Rossi. And as a result now, we can't use that property for anything other than open space, essentially, which in one respect is fine. But it prevents us from meeting our affordable housing obligations and doing some of the redevelopment effort that we want, because we've got township property tied up, even though no open space dollars may have been used to acquire that property. So I wanted to raise it to this committee to see if this is something that we should, as a municipality, push back on the DEP and say, get these properties off the Rossi. They never should have been put there in the first place.
Well, to your
right?
point,
And just to continue this is also an issue with Railroad Avenue and expanding the parking along Railroad Avenue. So we're in this situation now where we've gotten this property through whatever means it was acquired, not using open space dollars, and yet the state is preventing us from using it for parking or affordable housing obligation or what have you.
the irony there is we have one state agency, or really the Supreme Court and the legislative body, who, in my opinion, failed to do their job, so the Supreme Court ruled, telling us what our obligation is on fair share, and then we have another state agency preventing us from fulfilling what the Supreme Court has told us to do. So
Right.
it's-
of course, the good news is it results in a lack of vacant land.
The
From a not law standpoint.
Yeah, that actually helped us drive down the numbers, but,
Exactly.
now we can't fulfill our obligation, basically.
right, and that's a
I
point.
can report on Railroad Avenue. I did hear back from Green Acres, and unlike most cases, they weren't unalterably opposed to doing it. They did ask me to send them information on the public need for it, as well as the fact that there are no reasonable alternatives. So I'll try to get some information. I just heard from them yesterday. So at least that one.
That's great.
So, I mean,
It's a win-win.
I agree with Bruce on
Yes.
this. I mean, there's two situations, right? There's things that are on the Rosie,
Rosie, that's right.
right?
Rosie, Rossi,
Rosie,
however you want
Rossi.
to say it.
20 years
Right.
of calling it a Rossi.
That, were intended to be put there. They were conscious decisions, whether they were funded or unfunded. They were a conscious choice to be put onto the Rosie. And then there's the other stuff that's like, some form said, tell us all your open space.
Yep.
And we just listed everything we owned, and now all of a sudden
Is restricted.
It's restricted and untouchable.
Agreed.
I agree we should be trying to get that stuff back off because that was an administrative / clerical / misunderstanding error.
We should probably go back in one fell swoop and come up with a list of properties that we
come
think
with a
were
list
inadvertently
of like how to-
included.
I mean, I saw something that got put on as part of the acquisition across the street. There was an email about this, I don't remember which parcel, but some parcel got included in that because it got listed on the Rosie as part of the application across the street.
Well, once you accept Green Acres money, you're agreeing to put Green Acres restrictions on all funded and unfunded parkland. So anything we got,
This was separate.
No, but this was like, as part of that application, at least this is the way I read it, as part of that application process, there was another property somewhere else, completely unrelated, that was listed as open, and now it's on the Rosie.
yeah, I'm not disagreeing, we have properties on there that should not be on there.
That shouldn't be like that. We need to try and take
Clean
steps
it up
to
just a
correct
touch.
that and just have an issue, and if it means, I hate to say this out
Confronting.
loud, if it means going to a court to say, hey, this is how this wound up here, this wasn't intentional, we want it off.
Well, I think we have to go back to Green Acres first and exhaust our administrative remedies.
Right.
But I think we do need somebody to put together the list and say these properties clearly were never intended to be open space or recreational.
Yeah.
And I think Railroad Avenue is a prime example.
Right, so I would say let's direct Nancy to take our Rosie, review all the properties on it, and identify the ones that should come off, and then we go back through the DEP channels to make the request that all of them come off, and if they don't, then we try to strategize on an avenue to get them off the list.
If I may, you had asked this early on when I came, and I asked Paul Ferraro to look at it, and he came up with a list of like 7 properties. Do you remember that? So
I remember we
those were
discussed it.
the,
I didn't know we had a
right.
list.
So he has a list of 7 properties. I mean, I'll ask him to go back and see if there's
Good
more,
start.
but that's the
Yeah.
start.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, it would be, it would almost be great if we'd have a list of all the properties and how we got them. I don't know if that's
Well, I've been trying to
that's
find
a
out
lot
how we
of
got
title
some of
work.
them, and that's not always easy.
probably asking too much,
That's a
but
lot of title work, I'm sure.
Some of the older properties that just lost in the mist of time. I have no idea how we got them.
But if that's true, they couldn't possibly be Green Acres properties because Green Acres didn't exist.
Yes, but if we had them when we got Green Acres money, they become encumbered by Green Acres restrictions. And the town signs a contract at the time of acceptance of the Green Acres money saying you're going to encumber all your open space and recreational properties.
Right, and maybe our mayor, who knows some people down in Trenton these days, can start to socialize this issue and see if there's any sympathetic voices there.
But I do think the best first step would be to get these properties together and then request an
Yeah,
informal
let's-
meeting.
let's- Let's walk before you
So
run.
it can't be any property the township owns gets put on the
That's correct.
Rosie,
That's
right?
correct. I mean, like Town Hall is an example. Shouldn't be on Rosie. But any property that, see.
Any property that's not built on
No,
becomes.
No. Like if we acquired property for affordable housing purposes, then it wouldn't be. The problem is that once you put it on there, Green Acres takes a very expansive view of what open space is. So they could even argue with respect to Railroad Avenue, it's open space because it buffers, the residents on the
Not
other
because
side of the
it's a
street.
Little League field.
Yeah, not because it's a Little League field, it's just, and they've made that argument to me in Burnersville, on other properties that really had no recreational or open space value, in my opinion.
But then how does the town ever maintain anything to do something with at a later date if the second they take Green Acres, everything becomes.
it's restricted.
Well, but I think the
That makes
decision.
no sense.
But I think the onus is on us to add things to the Rosie, and I think at that time, we have to make the judgment, this property wasn't acquired for open space purposes. It was acquired for whatever other purpose.
yeah.
Or we, but I think the problem is, it's like smoking, it's harder to quit. Once you put
Once you're in.
something on the Rosie, it's harder to get it out. But I'm not saying we shouldn't, and I think we should take the list compiled by Paul and start on an informal basis and ask them to have a meeting with them and say, here's the story, we've got all these properties on the Rosie
Right.
that should be there, and these 7 or whatever should not. And then if we have to, then go through a formal process?
I mean, most of them honestly aren't going to matter anyway, because
That's
they're
right.
underwater, right?
Tiny little-
Correct.
There's really only, 4 places we can probably build on.
Right. Remember in connection with Oaks Road, it turned out it actually was dedicated to the town as open space, but fortunately, we did carve out the roadway easement.
Okay, thank you.
Old business, new business?
There's just, I guess it's new business, although we've talked about it before. We've talked about the opiate task force. We have a name for it, a way out, and we just added a new member. It was ourselves and the police department, Lieutenant Naga and Lieutenant Chambrello were all there. We're part of it. We met with Dr. Acevedo at the school, and he assembled a team from all 3 schools and was very supportive, and he agreed that he would participate as a member of the task force. And so I think you and I talked about it, Guy, about perhaps formalizing it in some way as we have a mission statement, and we also have as one of the first rollouts to the school, there's going to be a newsletter, and there's going to be an article in there about the task force. And so I was asking what we would do in order to make it. Do we want to, first of all, and
Is that
what
something
would
you
we
set up
do?
as a commission? And sorry, but I was going to turn it over to Jack.
Yeah.
Is that something you set up as a commission, a committee, advisory?
Well, you can, but
We want to give it some weight.
yeah, then we could set it up as an advisory committee in the township code if you want. I mean,
Would that be? Would that be prudent? I mean, that'd be something to do, or
Well,
are we in agreement that we want to do it?
Doesn't matter.
it doesn't really matter. I mean, if you set it up.
I mean, it's the
It's
actions, I think,
easier,
more than.
it's easier at the end of its useful life
Mhm.
to terminate it
Right.
if you don't have it in the code, or else you've got to pass an ordinance to end it. So, I've certainly got no objection if you just keep it the way it is. But it's up to you guys.
I would like it listed on the town website in some
Oh,
form.
you can do
whether it's
that.
gonna-
Yeah.
With the
Okay,
members
that'd be fine then,
listed.
yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't require an ordinance.
We established one.
Right.
Did we not? Well, we called it something else.
No.
Now it's,
I don't think we.
oh,
I don't think we established. We
well,
didn't.
it was
We
the
haven't
opiate
established it.
task force, and I think there's a tab, but we don't have it as
No, I don't mean on the
members.
website. I mean, did we not?
No.
This is a task force.
Just as a task
Yeah,
force?
it's an ad hoc committee, really.
Oh,
But
I don't think we ever did.
I thought,
No, there was something on, and we pulled it because it was.
Well, we could do a resolution establishing it without doing it by
Okay,
ordinance,
that would-
without putting it in the code book.
Do you want?
I think it would have the
What do
same-
you call it, a mayoral ad hoc committee, or do you just call it a
Just an
committee?
ad
You
hoc.
can call it a mayoral task force. I mean,
Okay.
what we call it's not terribly
It's
important.
a way out, I know we changed it,
Okay, I mean, it was just some way of formalizing
Yes.
it. It doesn't
and
need to
so
be a
it gets
commission
added,
or a
you want it
committee,
added
but
to the boards
just
and
as long as it
commissions
was.
and-
correct.
Yeah.
You want it, okay,
Correct.
page on the web, okay.
Okay.
And I think it shows that the schools are involved, the township committee's involved, the police department's involved.
If somebody can get me the names of people, so,
And then you can put it in the reorg agenda.
right, that's
To
what I'm
carry it
saying.
forward every year.
Keep it on our
Right.
list and stuff.
Okay.
So, all right, so we can try and do
Make,
that.
make sure you make your budget request early enough.
I mean, right now, we don't even have any
Well, you're
budget
probably
necessarily.
going to need a budget, so budget planning is coming up, so make sure Nancy
Okay,
has.
okay. I'll certainly do that.
Probably not going to get much done without any
Good tip.
money.
I wasn't even going to ask for money, but I certainly.
Not much. I wasn't saying a lot.
Take advantage of this. Cornell's offering money.
Santa
Actually,
Claus
you're
down there.
Food going around.
Now, this is an important issue, and it's
Yeah,
gonna,
yeah,
you're not going to get campaigns, and you're not going to get stuff out there without having some amount of money to work with.
Advertising or.
Yeah.
And it's coincidental, there's something from Municipal Alliance I'll read momentarily.
And actually, I don't know, because I'd like to, I don't want to take any credit for this one particular part of it, but just maybe if Lieutenant Naga could come up, because he was instrumental in this one part of it, which I think is quite big news for the for the way out as well as the township.
Good evening. This was actually brought forward by Mayor Pazurcia and Committee Member Brendan Ray. They approached the police department and wanted to, get this initiative going after the Morris County Prosecutor's Office put on a presentation, and I believe both members wanted to see something accomplished in a town, not just leave it at the presentation. So we did meet with Dr. Acevedo. And one of the things that came up is the teachers have an in-service coming up in March, I believe, sometime in early March. I reached out to Alton Robinson from Morris Cares, and they had trained myself, Committee Member Ray, Lieutenant Chambrello, and a couple other members in Narcan. They are willing, as of right now, we're just working out some logistical measures, but they're willing to train the entire school district of about 100 teachers in Narcan. Now, I say that with a little caution. It's not to indicate that we have a major problem in town, but to have all these teachers and the staff in our entire school district trained and have a kit that they will have with them wherever they go. They may be able to save somebody's life in another location. So please just know that there is no major problem. So if you do see something that 100 teachers are being trained to carry Narcan, it's just something that they can take with them wherever they are, keep in a car, or take to the mall, wherever that may be. So I'm just waiting on final confirmation. It looks like it's gonna happen on our in-service day.
So I know some towns that there's a concern about the cost, the funding for the Narcan itself. Is that something that we're going to work with the state? And the good news is Governor Murphy has carried on where Governor Christie, former Governor Christie, left off. So
these kits are offered free of charge from Morris Cares. We are not paying for it, but it sounds like Mr. Schuler is looking to offer some funding for the initiative. It'd be nice to have. There's actually a training at the community college to be a certified peer recovery specialist, which would tie into what we were doing. But I think it's minimal. I think the entire certification is about $395. So maybe something along those lines we may look for under our training. But other than that, we are making some headway with this initiative. So thank you for.
And so if I could ask, during the meeting, and that's great, Dr. Acevedo, and so that's wonderful. What about the high school?
I mean, what we're doing is kind of rolling this out,
Okay.
and so obviously the high school is going to be on the list, but we wanted to really cement the relationship
Okay.
with the schools in town, and Dr. Acevedo was really very welcoming and supportive in doing that, and so the next step will be, perhaps the high school or wherever we decide to take it, but right now things are happening in a positive manner with the task force.
Right. We're also looking at doing some things as far as in school. We're trying to set up some dates for back to school night, things of that nature to get in there. But as you referenced the high school, there is a program on a schedule. I believe it's on our website for March 6th. At the high school, they're going to have various tables, law enforcement tables, nurses, doctors, different panelists there to address some of these concerns for parents. If they have a question for law enforcement, they would go to that table and so on and so forth based on the area of expertise. So there is another part that we're going to participate in on March 6th over at the high school.
Thank you. So, I mean, that ties well into a letter we received from the Watchung Hills Regional Municipal Alliance. Before I go into that, because that's a little lengthier, JCP&L has a program to help anyone who needs financial assistance with winter heating bills. I won't go into it in detail. There's a phone number. Is this something we can list on the website or advertise? How would we get this out? Maybe we could put it on the LHTV.
And maybe in the
So-
echoes.
It's on every electric bill every month.
Yeah, but other than the bill itself, does anybody ever read that stuff? So
can't pay the bill, they might just be doing that.
maybe we could put something in the paper? Okay, will do. Thank you. And so this ties in well with what we were just discussing, the Watchung Hills Regional Municipal Alliance, which we've been supportive of for many years. As you know, there's a letter we received from Jack Walsh, and I think most of us, or all of us, know Jack and the great work he's doing with the Alliance. So the township received a letter, and just to put numbers to these things, 66,000 people died last year from alcohol and drug abuse. That is, to give a reference point, that's double the amount of people who were killed in auto accidents. It's not to lessen auto accidents, but it gives you a perspective. And they talk about an epidemic that's running through all communities, some more than others, but all communities have been touched, including Long Hill, by this crisis. So the Watchung Hills Municipal Alliance, last year there were many programs that they ran, and I know a lot of people attended these things, Hidden in Plain Sight, Minding Your Mind, Challenge Day. There was a great presentation by former NBA basketball player Chris Herron. There's a 30 for 30, I guess it is, but there's an ESPN special. I implore everybody, if gets the opportunity to watch this, it's called Hoop Dreams. One night I was flipping channels. It was late. I was just gonna, put 10 minutes in and go to sleep. 2 hours later, and then you couldn't sleep after watching it. So Hoop Dreams, it's Chris Herron. It's an ESPN special. Long Hill is a stigma-free community. We work with Watchung Hills on it, Knockout Opioids Day, et cetera, et cetera. Lieutenant Naga just mentioned the program. In fact, March 6th, it's called Let's Talk Drugs and Alcohol. It features Michael Robertson, the Somerset County prosecutor, and several other speakers. So this letter, for sure, we can put under the tab on A Way Out. I don't know if we've changed the name on the tab from Opioid Task Force. Maybe we need to keep it that way because A Way Out, maybe a lot of people don't know what that is just yet. But if we could put this letter there, and I applaud Jack for the work he does, and maybe that's a member you can reach out to so we can coordinate our efforts as we start working with the high school itself.
Yep.
And that's it as far as announcements are concerned. At this point, I would like to open up the meeting to the public for remarks, statements, questions, anything you want on any topic.
I'm just sitting here.
You're our only paying customer tonight besides Dennis, so I was...
Actually, I'm just here. I'm a nurse, and I'm doing some community service, so I'm just listening. And I'm so glad that I heard about the Alliance and some other things, so I have something to write about.
That's wonderful. Thank you for attending and for being so patient.
I've got 3 or 4 items.
Could you please state your name?
My name is Jose Dennis Sanda, Millington. For those of you who don't know me, I've been paying taxes to support you guys for 42 years.
And we appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I hope you've saved all the money I've paid you. About 3 or 4 items. First of all, with regard to committees and how to dignify them, I will remind you that about 2008, we actually wrote an ordinance to sanctify the Community Day Committee so that it would last forever. It lasted 1 more year after that, and then we had to unwind that ordinance. Right now, we've got a bunch of committees operating without ordinance, master plan, promotion and enhancement, the sewer ban committee in all its various manifestations over the past 17 years has never been dignified by an ordinance. So I think the mayor can do anything he wants to when it comes to appointing committees and task forces. The one I don't understand is why we, after 5 or 6 years, the Communications Advisory Committee was finally made into an ordinance, and then it stopped meeting.
The key is not to make it an ordinance.
Yeah, you know who I'm
Let's
looking
kill that
at.
ordinance, it'll start meeting again.
Speaking of promotion and enhancement, the Promotion and Enhancement Committee actually met, and a reminder goes out that we still have 4 welcome signs scattered at the corners of the town that do not have sponsors. So if anyone out there in TV land wants to sponsor a sign and have your name boldly emblazoned for the next 3 years underneath a Welcome to Long Hill sign, get in touch with the clerk's office, and they will be glad to give you the details. Well, actually, Andrea. Get in touch with Andrea.
And we have.
Just ask who's in charge of
And
signs.
we have an established fee.
Excuse me?
We have an established fee, was it
It's $1,500.
$1,500? Okay.
For that,
$1,500 buys you 3 years.
3 payments, $500 a year.
But we've got the signs. We started out with 10 back in 2008, and 4 of them dropped away, and ShopRite came in, and another one dropped away, and the result is we've still got 4 signs begging for sponsors.
Do you know the locations of those signs?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
And Andrea knows the location
Okay.
of those signs. Obviously, the most desirable signs are the ones that are currently in use. Or if you don't want to have a family sponsorship of one of these signs, I mean, just think, some of the families in town could split this up a whole bunch of different ways, and
The Township Committee.
at any rate,
I know you're looking at
if you
it.
don't want to sponsor it yourself or for your loved ones, then next time you stop in a merchant in town, ask them why they don't sponsor a sign. We've got a whole lot of businesses in town, all except 6, that don't sponsor signs, and with pressure from the public, they could be sucked into the fold.
Just to be clear, the businesses in town are wonderfully generous, and you know this. There's a Chamber of Commerce event tomorrow, which I'm sure you'll be at.
I'd like to talk for a minute about Rossi. And I speak as an expert because in 2014, because no one else seemed to care, either on the Planning Board or the Open Space Committee, Kevin and I rewrote the open space element of the master plan. And in the course of slicing and dicing every lot in town as to whether it was open space or vacant or whatever, or private, public, who owned it, we factored in the Rossi list. And one of the things that we learned is there's about 4, 5, 6, 7 errors in the Rossi list. It lists lots which do not exist, lots which are not municipally owned or vacant, just plain old stupid clerical errors.
But you fixed it, and it is now on.
Excuse me?
Do we have that now, or is it still with
The
the planning
list,
board?
the list that is of record has a number of minor errors in it. I can give.
Right, but I was going to ask you, have you presented, I mean, can you give it to Jack?
We fudged that so it is correct in the open space element. And in fact, the open space element has a very, very good list of all the municipally owned vacant lots. And that's the 2014 issue of the open space element of the master plan. It was a standalone issue. You can find it on the website, I'm sure. But I will give you a list of the exceptions that we found. And you should also note, Nancy, that when this list was prepared in 2013, the current list was prepared in connection with the purchase across the street, there was some dissension among the staff as to whether or not it should be 100% inclusive or selective. And Bruce has just reinvented a discussion that took place back 5 years ago
It was a discussion between an employee in town hall and a consultant in town hall. And if you ask around, you'll find out who the employee was that had the good sense to anticipate that this sort of nonsense would happen to us 5 years down the road. But this is not unforeseen. It was exposed at the time we did the open space element in 2014. But by that time, the damage had been done, and there was no pressing need to rectify it. Now, you're right, we should do a blanket amendment to the Rossi to take out any lot that has development potential. Now, a lot of the lots on there are very obviously unbuildable because they were given to the town as part of density modified developments. They were the wetland portion of a large lot that was unbuildable at the time, or steep slopes at the time, and so legitimately you can't do anything with them. We've already crossed that bridge. There are a few, probably not very many, like Oaks and Railroad, that do have some development potential, and it would be well to go through that again, but find the employee who was against the large list and put that employee to work on skinning it down. Don't trust your consultant.
So just to clarify that, so are you suggesting that it's the result of the consultant's recommendation that everything in town is on the Rossi?
Every vacant municipal lot in town is on the Rossi with 3 exceptions. Well, maybe a dozen. The 3 exceptions that are not on the list are the 3 lots across the street, because in fact they were not municipally owned at the time we prepared the list.
But you had said that a consultant
Was the driving factor.
was the drive, as opposed, you're saying that the employee was saying leave the stuff off,
Yes.
implying that the consultant said put the stuff
The
on.
consultant said put every
Okay,
lot that does not have a building on it that is owned by the
Okay.
municipality on the list. The employee said, no, only those that are legitimately open space and recreation.
okay. So now we know how it happened.
And so that's why with the exception of the fact that there's a half a dozen clerical errors, which I will surface for you, of stuff that shouldn't be on there at all, or was simply miscoded. There's another lot like it that should have been on, back and forth. Minor mistakes. But I would start as a reference point, I would start with the open space element of the master plan, because that has a true and legitimate inventory from 2014, and I know that because it's got my initials on the bottom of every page.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis.
And a final reminder, the street fair is coming right up. It's only 2 months away, April 22. And the bike race will be coming shortly thereafter in either June or July. If you guys ever respond to my memo of 5 weeks ago talking about paving, which I mentioned 3 weeks ago and asked for a response, and I'm still waiting, but I'm a very patient person.
I think
Thank you.
Tom did respond to you.
And happy Valentine's Day to
Thank-
all of you.
That's right. So, happy Valentine's Day to
Thank you,
my
Dennis.
wife, my daughter, and my son. I love you. I think you all should say the same thing. If there's nothing else, motion,
So moved.
Second?
all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you. Meeting adjourned.